First of all, I'd like to say sorry for the beard. It's getting rather messy. I'm growing it out for Valhalla, and it is all over the place. And this camera really doesn't help me with that angle. But greetings! It's time for another video. I know I say this a lot, but friends and a lot of critics I just see around all herald this as the game of a generation. And despite all the games I bought on the PlayStation 2, I never once played this one. Is it truly as great as everyone claims, or is it victim to nostalgia goggles? Find out today if I'll be SuggesTing Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus is an open-world boss rush puzzle game with speedrun elements. It will have you traversing the forbidden lands of the gods. The protagonist has been given a task by the doorman which will have you going around and slaying all these colossi, which, as you can imagine, are massive. This game takes a very much relaxed approach to storytelling, making the real focus being these beasts who are essentially giant puzzles. One thing this game has going for it, partly because it's a remake, is that the environments, they are absolutely stunning. I was often just looking around and even at the little things like, how do these rocks look so damn good? And on the most part, the beauty comes from the background. Everything was essentially a plane to get somewhere, an arena or a side exploring area for the sake of exploring. There are three distinct areas. Deserts, I always hate traversing these because normally barren in life and nothing distinct about them. However, it did have one of my favourite colossi to fight because the terrain enabled it to do cooler things and added variety to the game, but aesthetically, there isn't a lot to say. It's a desert. Plains. I think the main reason these existed was to help with not only navigating, but the big battles themselves. You are consistently looking upwards, so having to watch for trees, for example, will just take you out of the experience. So I do like this approach because it added a sense of scale, and the beauty was often in the background. So I would often get distracted looking over there. They would, however, break these up with land features between places, putting you through valleys, into ruins, and giving it their own take on Mayan ruins. Lakes, much like the desert, what made these good was the environment allowing the colossi to use it to further add to the variety that was the fights. I've always loved water areas because frankly they are beautiful and the scenery is great. I always go on about the background, and in fact that's to do with the fact I kept looking at these lovely distant waterfalls. The swimming though, that lacked significantly. It reminded me of a very slow Ocarina of Time, and the only way to speed it up was to go underwater, which pulled the camera. That reminds me though, the camera, I like mine to be as manual as possible. There are so many cases where they like to override you and pull it another way. The best comparison here is if you ever played GoldenEye and you were aiming the gun, it would snap back, making you realign it. Not the end of the world, but I found this more frustrating in the water segments because there was simply nothing to look at apart from maybe one time. But there were some features that did help, such as focus on the colossi and your horse aggro. Travelling on horseback was quite cumbersome at times. Luckily, the areas being massive, this doesn't really matter, but I did find it not really easy to line up whilst going over land bridges, for example. So if it wasn't for the fact there were invisible walls, I guarantee both me and aggro would have died several times because I was constantly oversteering. However, when you're doing the boss fights due to the giant arenas, this isn't a problem. There were a select few things you could do, such as finding and eating fruit, finding other items, and even praying at shrines dotted around the map. And having more to do is always great, but I never felt compelled to go around and look at everything. However, on the few occasions I did, it was incredibly slow on horseback in the more confined areas, be it woods or along cliffs. This may be normal in some games, but due to how fast you can get around, it's a sharp change of pace, and not necessarily for the better. One time my horse even got stuck due to pathfinding issues, and I had to go find aggro and very slowly guide him out. Very few games take what I call the Breath of the Wild approach. I probably should call it the Shadow of the Colossus approach, but what do I mean? Well, my friends, that is the fact that it takes a very different approach to sound design and music. The scores are genuinely amazing, and you will hear them throughout this video. It doesn't drown you in its either by grabbing the same theme and playing it on repeat, but only when something of significance is happening, be it story, taking on or striking the killing blow to Colossi, that further added to the lament I was feeling towards them. Some people do not like this approach, but I love it, and I wish more open world games let me take in the sights without some song blazing in my ear the whole time. And it only further emphasizes the point that this land is desolate and forbidden. Having this labelled as the combat section doesn't really do it justice, because while you do have a sword and a bow, these aren't used in a conventional way. You never find yourself just swinging, and when you do shoot, it's purely to gain the attention of whichever Colossi you're attacking. And when you do actually attack, it feels more like a piece of the puzzle than a fighting system you can actually learn compared to other games where there are combos, timing for parries. This is further exemplified by the fact that the game houses no mobs or minions of any kind besides the bosses, which in some ways is more refreshing because there simply isn't an experience like this. This may sound like a sweeping statement, but the vast majority of Colossi are the same. Only a few truly vary, and don't get me wrong, the ones that are good, really good. And there is one above a lake, and the flying one there is just awesome. I got that rush when it came swooping at me, and I had to jump on it as the air rushes around you, pulling up with the sheer speed it goes at you. I really did enjoy that. In fact, actually both flying ones are simply fantastic. What is the core of these fights? Each Colossi has anything from 1 to 5 weak points, where it can actually take damage. These can be found using the light ability from the sword, but make sure you are standing in the sun. None of these can be hurt whilst on the ground, so you have to climb on them. All of them have a different way to do so, be it from gaining the high ground, baited attack to hold on, hitting mini weak points to make it drop its wings. My point being that there are 16, and while not all vary in look, they certainly do in approach. Climbing is a key component to this. You do have a health and stamina gauge, but personally there are only 2 occasions where I actually died, so you only have to watch the stamina bar. They'll try and shake you off, so you have to be careful when you move or climb up and across things. You definitely have to analyse the path ahead because some climb points do have dead ends, and you have to make sure not to waste your time. When it eventually holds still, you can run along them without climbing, but the game would make you trip in advance of some movement, which could be very frustrating, and if it's before you land any damage, it was even worse. However, in most cases you could hold on and grab, which would usually find something to hold on as you tumble down, but if it didn't, you don't take a lot of damage. Everyone has one moment in a game that makes them quit or get so frustrated you need a break. I will refrain from describing each and every one of these bosses because the vast majority are good. 4 really frustrated me, but the other 12 didn't. What moment was this, Ting? Well, let me tell you. It was a damn horse boss. They tell you to hide if something should happen, but I am not joking when I say most of the time I hid, I lost his attention and aggro, and he would turn back and not do what he was supposed to do, and that is lower his head so I can climb up. That, along with the arena being small, its huge turn radius, was a very clunky, and most bosses took 2 to 10 minutes at most. How long does this take me? 48 minutes! Yeah, as you can imagine, I was heavily frustrated and very ready to leave the game at this point. One saving grace is that after a while of no progress, the game does recognize this and will give you hints, and most of the time they do work and help you progress. These fights, however, besides that one moment that took way too long, my average was around 4 or 5 minutes. That could be a good thing or a bad thing depending on who you are, but this game only took 5.5 hours. In the stats selection, they even have a how long did you take your quickest times, so this really is designed for you to come back and do it again and again to get the most optimal time, which is where I deem the speedrun section of the game. What are the motivations? Why we take on these magnificent beasts that roam seemingly rather docile in their environments? Something that always struck me was that I felt somehow I was constantly punching down, no pun intended, on a largely defenseless target, so instead of the joy of beating a puzzle, I felt bad for striking it down, especially when the music is starting, and it really questioned, why did I do this? Is it all really worth it? So if you could take anything from this video, is that I actually felt bad for them. But about those motivations, let's cover that in the story section. The story starts off with you as a lone warrior riding your brilliant steed aggro, and there's immediately a question that was asked. Who is that dead lady with him? you get a good chance to see the surrounding areas and learn during the Forbidden Lands, and when a shadow-like creature approaches you with this light sword, they are cast aside. You stole it from your tribe, but after some talking, you learn that these are called doormen. The protagonist, named Wanderer, is desperate to have who I can't tell is a partner or family member, but nonetheless, he wants her soul back so that she may live. The doormen tell Wanderer they are willing to bring her soul back so long as you pass a test. And that is to destroy all 16 idols in the temple, and they are linked to the Colossi in the land. So off you go, taking one down after another. Every time you do this, this strange black essence enters the Wanderer. He collapses and is taken back to the temple. This is rinsed and repeated. I know there was motivation, I'm using quote marks again, but honestly, I felt bad every time I took these down, especially with that music. But slowly, you change more and more pale, start growing horns, and look more corrupted. Genuinely, this was such an odd journey. I have played nothing like this, and the story in this game, I will think it's the weakest aspect. I left this so confused, I thought it was a Kojima game. And even after googling the synopsis, I learned literally nothing new, to my surprise. So if you are a player who needs story motivation, besides the most basic of this person that our protagonist cares about, who we know nothing about, needs saving, I just wanted to turn around with aggro and go home. Shadow of the Colossus is an open-world puzzle platforming game with speedrun elements. It is designed to be tackled multiple times, with you chasing down your own times in taking down the Colossi, which is something I normally go for, being very competitive with myself. But it took me roughly 5.5 hours to beat on my first playthrough. The story is lacking, it looks beautiful, soundtrack is amazing, and the puzzles can be a little easy at times. But this game offers an experience that no other does, and for that reason alone, I am suggesting Shadow of the Colossus. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching today. It really does mean the world to me, and I hope you're having a great day so far. But I would like to thank our newest Patreon members and existing Patreon members. So thank you so much to The First Falcon, MRC, Sly, Samson, Super Tanukian for your continued patronage. It really does mean the world to me. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys for another episode of SuggesTing in 2 weeks.